for the accused. Any time is necessary to make sure the information presented is clearly understood. The accused will be seated here in the chair. This is Antoinette Haight. And the defense lawyer will be seated to the front and will stand here when addressing the accused or the jury. All clear? Mr. District Attorney, you may begin your case.
What's your name, man?
Antoinette Haight.
Antoinette Haight. According to the official records, that's only one of your names, isn't it? How many other names have you had? Well, let's start with Bump. B-U-M-P. You were born Antoinette Bump, someplace in Madison County, right? The daughter of Silas and Lovina Bump. And you moved to DeRuyter, and you moved to Pompey Center in the town of Pompey, then Cazenovia, then you moved to Fabius, then to Watervale, then back to Pompey, then back to Fabius, then Delphi. Then you moved back to Fabius, finally back to DeRuyter. Does that sound about right? How old are you now, man?
53.
So it's kind of safe to assume that you have not lived the life of a normal person. Your childhood family name was Bump, then you got married, your name became Edgerton. Your husband was John Edgerton, is that correct?
Your Honor, this line of questioning is absolutely without merit or meaning. I move it be stricken from the records.
Motion denied. Continue.
And you lived with John Edgerton just outside the village of Delphi for more than 12 years, is that correct? Right there near Limestone Creek.
Yes. Why do you ask me these silly questions?
Now, exactly what happened to Mr. Edgerton?
He died
Where was that?
on our way to North Carolina.
You're going to North Carolina. How are you traveling? Stagecoach? Horseback? Horse-drawn wagon? How are you traveling?
By boat.
You're traveling to North Carolina by boat? Why was that?
Well, I wanted to do that. Never been on a boat before.
All right, you're on a boat headed to North Carolina with your husband, Mr. Edgerton, and what happened?
Well, he died.
He died on the boat?
Well, yes.
Why did he die on the boat on the way to North Carolina?
Spasms.
Spasms. What kind of spasms? The kind caused by poison or something?
Your Honor,
Denied. Continue, Mr. DA.
What caused the spasms that killed your first husband, Mrs. Haight? Where did you bury Mr. Edgerton's body, man?
He's not buried.
Your first husband's body is not buried?
No, I told you, for goodness sakes, we were on a boat.
Well, that's interesting. But where is Mr. Edgerton?
In the water. In the ocean.
What? He's in the ocean? Mrs. Haight, your first husband died of spasms and you had him pushed into the ocean?
Well, the captain of the boat said it was okay.
So Mr. Edgerton's body is down there underneath the water and the fish and the
Your
crabs.
Honor, Your
and
Honor, Your Honor, this is outrageous. Please tell me to return now.
Enough, Mr. District Attorney. Leave that alone. Move on.
Mr. Edgerton have any life insurance of any kind?
Well, yes, a little bit.
Well, the records show that that little bit of life insurance was $10,500. Now, to most of us, that's a fortune. And you say it's a little bit? All right. Then you went to Delphi and you moved in with your mother and father, is that correct? And 2 months later, your father died. Very suddenly. Wasn't sick for a very long time at all. He may have been poisoned. Perhaps he died of spasms, is that right?
Objection. Objection, Your Honor. All this has nothing to do with the case at hand. The district attorney is attempting to poison the minds of the jury.
I kind of agree with you. Would you explain your reasoning here, Mr. DA?
Well, it's very simple. You're sick. It's very simple. Your Honor.
Is he sick or sick?
Whoa. Your Honor, it's really very simple. All I want to do, I want this jury to fully understand the pattern of events in this woman's life that led to her killing Mr. Haight.
Objection.
No, you may continue with this questioning.
Shortly after your father died, 2 weeks later, your mother died. Suspicions of suffocation. Right? So then you married Cyrus Wood in 1867. You lived in Delphi. And before the end of the year, Mr. Wood died. You weren't married to Mr. Wood for a full year. How did he die?
He wasn't well. He was a sick man, for gracious sake.
Did Mr. Wood die of spasms also? The kind of spasms that were thought to be caused by poisons? And what did Mr. Wood leave you? Mr. Wood left all of his property, about $5,000 in cash and $3,000 in insurance. Is that right? Is that correct, ma'am?
I don't remember, for goodness sakes. I don't remember.
And you know, the Delphi neighbors thought there was something wrong about Mr. Wood's death by spasms, and they wanted the justice to look into it here in Delphi. But the local preacher went to the justice, and he said, no, don't do that. It would be bad for the village to have that happen. Is that all correct, ma'am? And this husband, you buried at Shed's Corners, right?
You are a mean and evil man.
Then, you married George W. Haight, the writer.
The bench will interrupt at this time, Mr. DA. Before you begin the questioning of the accused regarding the death of Mr. Haight, the defense attorney may now question the witness concerning any of the information covered up to this time. Would you proceed, Mr. DA? Or
District Attorney.
Yeah.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Mrs. Haight, despite the innuendos and accusations and misleading information from the district attorney, let's revisit some of the times mentioned earlier. First, when you were a teenager in DeRidder, I understand you were a very attractive young woman, right?
Well, that was some time ago.
Many of the young men in DeRidder came calling, right?
Well, yes. Lots of church suppers and hay rides and barn dances and going for walks. Oh, yes.
And, like any young attractive woman, you enjoyed these times.
Oh, yes. Especially the hay rides.
Ah, yes. And an intelligent young woman. Didn't you teach school for a while?
Oh, yes. Yes, I did. A wonderful, rewarding experience.
Then, you married Mr. John Edgerton and you lived in Delphi, right?
A wonderful place to live. Oh, yes. And John was a wonderful man. A wonderful man.
And you had a child.
Oh, yes. A little boy who died at And then another little boy.
And then,
He died of fits and seizures.
and then a third child, a little girl.
Yes, and she died of diphtheria.
And you're sure it was diphtheria?
Well, I remember that's what the doctor said.
All right, now, after that, how did it come about that you and Mr. Edgerton, your husband, were on a boat bound for North Carolina?
Well, John wasn't feeling too good. He got pretty sick sometimes, and we decided to sell our house and property and go to a different climate. We thought it might be good for him.
Why? Why were you on a boat?
We heard of the ocean and wanted to see what it looked like, I guess. John had this bad cough. Thought maybe it would help. More moisture.
Ah, and understanding that he died on the boat, why did you dispose of his body in the ocean?
I don't know. It just seemed the thing to do at the time. The only other thing to do was find a way to get him back to the cemetery here in DeRuyter.
And that for a young woman, all alone, that would have been a very difficult thing to do.
Oh, yes, and expensive.
And expensive. Were you saddened by the death of Mr. Edgerton?
Saddened?
Did you grieve? Did you cry?
Oh, yes, my goodness, oh, yes.
Well, Jeanette, was your marriage to Mr. Edgerton a good marriage?
Oh, my goodness, yes.
Did you kill Mr. Edgerton?
Oh, no, of course not.
And then you moved into your parents' home in Delphi, and you cared for them, right?
Yes, sir, I did.
And then your father died. Did you poison him?
What that man says is a lie. He is a mean liar.
Did you poison your father? Did you suffocate your mother? And then after a period of mourning, you married Mr. Cyrus Wood. Now, was the marriage to Mr. Wood a good marriage?
Oh, for goodness sakes, yes, it was special. Cyrus was quite taken with me, I must admit. He was a little bit old, you know, and not very healthy, but a very nice man.
And how did he die?
Well, he died of spasms.
No, I mean, did he die a happy man?
Oh, yes, indeed. Oh, yes, indeed.
What do you remember most about him?
Well, he had this really nice smile, and he was a handsome man, and his mustache. He had this...
Ah. All right, Anjanette, did you kill Mr. Wood?
Oh, I wouldn't do that.
All right.
All right, it's time now to return to the interrogation of the accused by the district attorney. Would you proceed?
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defense attorney did a real nice job now, didn't he? Those of you that are still awake, however. He forgot to mention a few things while talking with Mr. Haight. For example, when first husband John Edgerton died of so-called spasm, she received insurance of $10,500. And then within 3 or 4 months over in Delaware, both her father and her mother died, and we cannot find records showing how much she inherited from their deaths. Next, husband number 2 died and left her all his property plus $8,000. And the defense attorney also forgot to mention that of the 7 deaths associated with that woman, only one was considered a natural death, not caused by something that someone had done. that someone is sitting right here. Tell the jury how you killed George, Mrs. Haight.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, I object. There is no proof of anything the district attorney is claiming happened. No proof.
Yes, would you move on, Mr. Attorney?
Yes, I will. Let's get directly to the case of George. We talk about a few things that have occurred in the past, prior to his death. And George Haight, ladies and gentlemen, was killed. Didn't kill himself, he was killed. And we'll get to the precise method of that in a moment. Tell the jury how you killed George, Mrs. Haight. All right, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go back a few years. In the village of DeRuyter, as a young man, George Haight had a good job working as a clerk at the A.N. Anna's store. The store was owned by his uncle, who was a good job, and he was a good clerk. Very helpful, very friendly. Now, Mrs. Haight, how did you first meet George?
At the Anna store. I bought things at the store. I went there often.
Okay, and what next?
Well, I had a kerosene lamp that had run out of a wick. It needed a new wick. And I took the lamp to the store and asked Mr. Haight to fix it.
Yeah. And then what?
Well, I asked him to bring it to my house when it was fixed.
Yes, yes, yes. And then what?
Well, he brought it to my house after work one evening, and I paid him for it,
And what?
well, we sat on the front porch on the swing, and we talked for a while.
Yes, yes, and then?
Well, we went into the house.
Yes, yes. And then what happened when you went in there?
That's none of your business.
Your Honor,
Yes.
this line of questioning is absolutely unrelated to the matter at hand.
Agreed. I think that's enough, Mr. District Attorney. You've made your point.
So then you married him. You married him, see, October 7, 1868. And you actually lived with George Haight for over 12 years over on Division Street in the village. Is that right, ma'am?
Yes, George and I were husband and wife for a good long time. Gracious, yes.
Did you know that several of his friends told him not to marry you? Told him that if he did marry you, you'd probably kill him. But he did marry you. Probably because he was a nice, healthy young man, and that evening on the swing.
Your Honor, please. Honor, this is irrelevant.
You used your female wiles to seduce George W. Haight.
Your Honor,
Move
will
on.
you
Move
allow
on,
this
Mr.
kind
DA.
of scurrilous?
I agree.
Thank you.
Your Honor, there should be a limit to the kind of adjectives.
Yes, I will.
Try to influence.
Do you not understand what scurrilous means?
I certainly do.
Good,
Do you want a definition?
please.
No. All right. Did you know, Mrs. Haight, that the sheriff found 3 bottles of poison in your house?
No,
Why did you have all that poison in there, Mrs. Haight?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, sure, you don't know anything about poisons. No. Especially the kind of poisons that causes people to die because of seizures or spasms. Okay. Did George have any life insurance of any kind?
Some,
Well, how much?
I don't know.
Did George know he had life insurance policies payable to you in case of his death?
Of course.
How big were the policies?
I don't know.
How about $26,000? Did George know about those policies?
Of course,
Did he sign them?
of course. George's name was on them.
But ma'am, George didn't sign them. The sheriff determined it was your writing, not George's writing. You'd signed his name to the policies, not George.
Well, he didn't like to write much.
What do you mean he didn't like to write much? He was a salesman. He quit his clerk's job for a higher paying job as a traveling salesman. He made his living writing up orders, and he wrote you letters when he was out of town. George traveled a lot in his job. And when you had meals together, man, did you ever notice that he would not eat any food you prepared until you had eaten some?
What are you talking about?
Just that. George was quite worried that you would poison his food. He was very worried about it. So he would not eat any of it until you had eaten some of it.
Well, I never saw such a silly thing.
Oh, yes, ma'am. He told several of his friends about it, and then his cups of coffee.
George liked his coffee fresh made and hot. Yes, indeed. And I made sure it was just perfect.
Oh, yes, ma'am, yes, just perfect. Did you also know that he would exchange cups with you when you were not looking? So that you wound up drinking the coffee that you had intended for George. Now, I know it's a difficult thing to understand, but George was very fearful that you would try to kill him. But Mrs. Haight, to put it very simply, he simply didn't want to give up sleeping with you.
Your Honor, I must object. This line of questioning is, I must use the word again, scurrilous. It is irrelevant
You made your point,
and
Mr. DA.
embarrassing to my client.
Would you move on?
Did one of your housekeepers quote you as saying to George, "You're a devilish fool. I wish you were in hell"? Did you say that?
Of course not. I would never say that to anyone.
Mr. Haight spent a lot of time traveling because of his job, didn't he, ma'am?
Yes, yes he did.
And wrote you a lot of letters, is that correct?
Oh, yes.
And he usually ended each letter with the words "love" and 50 kisses. Is that right?
Well, yes.
And you still thought he was guilty of infidelity, cheating on you.
That's none of your business. You are the devil.
And you claimed earlier that George didn't like to write, but he wrote you many, many times.
His letters were hard to read.
All right, ma'am. There had been several incidents prior to George's death that I want the jury to be acquainted with. One time, for example, neighbors passing by the Haight house, Division Street, noticed black smoke coming from the edges of the upstairs roof. They rushed to the front door, banged on it, and you came to the door, ma'am. You opened the door and you told the people to pay no mind to the smoke. Everything was fine. Do you remember that, ma'am?
Liars, liars, liars.
But the neighbors ignored your attempts, pushed them out of the house. They rushed past you and up the stairs. And what did they find upstairs, Mrs. Haight?
I don't remember.
They found George Haight unconscious on the floor of the bedroom, stacks of kerosene-smoked rags burning all around him. That's what they found. Remember that, ma'am? Mrs. Haight, did your neighbors make that story up? Did you try to kill George when that happened?
Those neighbors are terrible people. All the neighbors in DeRuyter are awful, terrible liars.
Regardless of what you think of your neighbors, why was George lying unconscious on the floor?
He was not. It's all lies.
Mrs. Haight, 3 different neighbors told the sheriff the same story.
Liars, liars, liars.
George go to church?
Well, he used to the Seventh-day Baptist. But he quit. Said he thought religion was some kind of a fraud.
Well, Mrs. Haight, let's get to the real reason we're here. Did you take my gun?
Under the
I
chair.
hit it. Oh, there it is,
We found it.
under your chair.
Your name is Patrick.
All right. You have a gun that looks like this in your house?
Well, George kept a gun in the case of robbers or something.
This gun? This one?
I don't know that. Why would I know that? Guns are for men. Guns are not for ladies, sir.
Where was this gun kept?
I don't know. Why would I know that?
Why would you know that? In case you wanted to get it and shoot George Haight? That's why you would know that.
I'm not going to talk to you
Please,
anymore.
Your Honor. Your Honor, direct the witness to respond to questions.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, I must interrupt. The district attorney's style of questioning the accused is totally unacceptable and certainly grounds for appealing any verdict rendered by this jury. The accusations are not made with the intent of getting information. They are designed to alienate the jury against the defendant.
Mr. Lawyer, that's what the district attorney's job is all about. That's what he's charged with doing.
Really?
And Mr. District Attorney, please attempt to elicit information from the accused without further theatrics.
Very well, Your Honor. Mrs. Haight, two different housekeepers of yours have quoted you as saying some very bad things to George. One was, "I wish you were in hell." And another was, "I'm so mad at you, I could kill you." And another housekeeper said you were always peevish and angry. Now, Mrs. Haight, tell us once and for all, did you use this gun to kill your husband? Your Honor,
Respond to the question, Mrs. Haight.
Of course not.
where was the gun kept?
In the cabinet drawer.
What cabinet would that be, ma'am?
The one upstairs.
Where upstairs?
The one by the bed.
On your side of the bed?
No, on George's side of the bed.
Could you reach it from your side of the bed?
Could I reach what?
The drawer, ma'am, the drawer with the gun in it that killed Mr. Haight.
No, I couldn't reach that drawer. Gracious sakes, no.
But you could have removed the gun from the drawer before you and George went to bed, couldn't you? And put the gun under your pillow.
Of course not. Why in the world would I do that?
We'll get to that in a minute.
No, my goodness, no.
You couldn't reach across George and open the drawer?
Goodness, no.
How about putting the gun under your pillow until George goes to sleep?
Why would I do that?
So you could wait till he went to sleep and then shoot him, that's why. All right, let's determine how you did all this. Oh, by the way, you are left-handed, aren't you? Okay. Did you sleep on the right side of the bed or on the left side of the bed?
Well, I slept on the left side,
And George?
and George slept on the right side.
And
Why do you ask such personal questions?
And you're left-handed, is that correct? Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, visualize this. In bed, I am the circuit you stand up for. In bed, this is Mr. Haight. I am Mrs. Haight. I am left-handed. Now, if I had the gun with which to kill Mr. Haight and was right-handed, I would have trouble trying to shoot him right there, wouldn't I? However, if I were left-handed, reached under my pillow, got the gun, it wouldn't work. Thank you, sir. Are you feeling okay?
Yes.
Is that how you did it, ma'am?
How can you say things like that? You're an evil man.
All right. Now let's go back to the night George was shot. We want the jury to understand the sequence of events. What happened?
Well, we were both asleep as far as I know. And suddenly I heard this real loud noise. Right there next to me. And I woke up and I called Mrs. Furman,
Who was Mrs. Furman?
the housekeeper. Her bedroom was right next to our bedroom, the master bedroom.
You had a housekeeper? You didn't keep your own house?
I was feeble.
Your Honor, this is irrelevant.
So you heard this loud noise and you called for the housekeeper.
Yes, I did. I called for Mrs. Furman, and she came into our bedroom and lit the kerosene lamp next to the bed.
And?
Oh my goodness, she saw blood on George's pillow. And I told her to run and get Dr. Truman and bring him over to look at George.
Did George talk to you? Was he still alive?
Oh, gracious sakes, yes. He talked about going to the town board meeting that morning.
Now, wait a minute. His pillow is covered with blood, and he talked to you about going to the town board meeting?
Yes, sir, he did. And he talked about a lot of other things.
He's lying there bleeding to death, and he's talking about going to meetings?
And then Dr. Truman rushed into the bedroom, lighted some more kerosene lamps, and looked at George carefully.
What Dr. Truman found, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, was a bullet hole in Mr. Haight's forehead, right here. About an inch above the eye, with particles of gunpowder on the skin surrounding the bow in his head. And it went into the brain about 4 inches deep. That sound right, Mrs. Haight?
You are evil. You are evil.
The surface of the brain had been partially destroyed, and the blood was pouring out of the bullet hole. Right, Mrs. Haight?
Your Honor, I must object again.
Objection denied. Continue, Mr. DA.
Now the bullet hit some bone, part of the skull, but it continued on for the 4 inches into the head, into the brain that we mentioned before. Is that the way you remember it, Mrs. Haight? And the blood just kept coming out of that hole in the forehead. Correct, ma'am? Please answer the question. You're lying there beside your husband at this time, aren't you?
Objection, Your Honor. This is cruel and unnecessary. We strongly object to this line of personal hearsay. No
Objection.
witness.
Objection denied.
And then you sent your housekeeper, Mrs. Furman, to get the doctor, and you rushed back to your bedroom, and that's what happened. Your Honor, the jury cannot decide this case intelligently if the accused refuses to answer questions.
Mrs. Haight, you must respond to the district attorney's questions.
The doctor talked with George.
She actually talked with him while George is lying there with a bullet in his brain.
Yes, he did.
Did he ask George what had happened?
I don't know.
Oh, yes, he did. He asked him. Mr. Haight's reply was that he thought he had been shot, wasn't it?
I don't know.
Then Dr. Truman said, George, why did you shoot yourself? What was George's answer, ma'am?
I don't know.
Mrs. Haight, George told the doctor that he did not shoot himself. Didn't he? Did you hear him say that? And then the doctor asked her husband who did shoot him in the forehead. And what was his response, ma'am? Ma'am, you were lying there next to your husband. And the doctor asked him who shot him. What did he say? He said, you shot him. He said, you shot him. He said you wanted to kill him. Why did you want to kill your husband?
I didn't kill him. I didn't kill him. Why would I do that? Why would I kill him? He was my
Brutal question.
Mrs. Haight, the court is sorry that certain information is very disturbing, but it must be done to ensure that the jury gets all the information it should have to make decisions. Would you proceed,
Yes.
Mr. Attorney?
Where did you put the gun after you shot him, ma'am?
I did not shoot my
Did he
husband.
shoot himself?
I don't know. Somebody could have come into the room and shot him.
So you don't think he shot himself?
Well, yes, really, I think that's what happened.
Where did Dr. Truman find that? Where did the doctor find this gun, ma'am?
I don't know.
Under your pillow. The gun that killed Mr. Haight was found under your pillow. Now, do you actually believe George could have shot himself in the forehead and then put the gun under your pillow?
I don't know. I don't know.
You consider yourself a spiritualist. Is that correct?
Well, I have certain gifts. Yes, I do.
And after the shot that killed George, you claim to have seen a spirit of some kind in your bedroom. Is that correct?
Yes, I did. I saw another man in the bedroom.
Please describe that other man.
Well, he was standing between the bed and the coal stove, and he was short, and he was wearing flesh-colored pants, and he had a veil over his face.
Did you recognize him?
Well, I know he's from DeRuyter, but I don't know his name.
You killed your husband, ma'am. You killed your husband. Your Honor, until the final summation to the jury, we rest our case.
The defense attorney will now proceed.
Thank you, George. Thank you. Did you kill your husband, Mrs. Hayes?
Oh, of course not. Of course
Did
not.
you have any reason to kill your husband, Mrs. Hayes?
Oh, no, of course not.
Did you love your husband?
With all my heart.
Did you put the gun under your pillow?
Oh, no, of course not.
Was Mr. Haight a drugger? Was he a drugger?
He promised me he had stopped drinking alcohol, but he did take morphine.
You're sure of that?
Oh, yes, yes, indeed.
Have you taken morphine the night he shot himself?
Well, I really don't know, but he probably did.
Did you go to church?
Oh, yes, every Sunday. Or just about every Sunday.
You believe in the third commandment?
Oh, yes, I think so. What's that commandment again?
Thou shalt not kill.
Oh, yes, I believe in it. Oh, yes, I have always believed in it.
Now, Mr. Haight's job kept him away from home a lot, didn't it?
Oh, yes. Yes, it did.
Did you love him less because of that?
Oh, no, no, no.
Did you often stay out of town overnight while on his business travels?
Oh, goodness, yes.
Did you have reason to believe he was unfaithful to you on his travels?
Well, I think so.
Why is that?
Well, sometimes in his sleep, he would reach over and touch me and say, Mabel.
Not onto that. Maybe. Did you accuse him of infidelity?
Well, yes, yes, of course I did.
What did he say?
He denied it, of course. What do you think? Don't all men deny it?
All right. Now, what happened the night Mr. Haight was shot?
Well, I was asleep, and suddenly I heard this very loud noise, and I woke up and I screamed for Mrs. Furman.
And then?
Well, she came in and lit the light, and she saw the blood, and I saw the blood, and we both screamed. I told her to run to Dr. Truman's house and bring him over to our house immediately.
So, actually, Mrs. Haight, you did everything possible to help Mr. Haight, right?
Oh, yes, I held his hand and I kissed him
pray?
Oh, yes, I prayed and I prayed.
Why would Mr. Haight want to shoot himself?
Oh my goodness, lots of reasons. He wasn't feeling very good, you know. And he was ever so tired of all that traveling. All that time riding on trains. He spent most of his time riding on trains, you know.
Yes. Now, Mrs. Haight, he traveled a lot and was gone overnight, often gone overnight, correct?
My goodness, yes.
Now, once again, did he have any girlfriends?
Well, I certainly wondered about that. I asked him and he said, no, of course not. But I wondered about that. He was a very handsome man, you know. And he had that voice. Used to send shivers up and down my spine, it did. And the smile, gracious sake, and the cute things he would say.
Cute things?
Oh, he called me pumpkin pie and sweetie and mommy and other things.
Mrs. Haight, this is a Bible. When you were sworn in, you put your hand on this book and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
Now, put your hand on this Bible again. Before all these people in the jury. And repeat after me. I swear I did not kill George Haight.
I swear, I did not kill George Haight.
The defense rests, Your Honor.
Any cross-examination, Mr. District Attorney?
No cross, Your Honor.
That will proceed with the final address to the jury. Your address to the jury, Mr. Defense Counsel.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this has been a classic courtroom case of attempted intimidation. What we have witnessed is a district attorney willing to say just about anything to influence your decision and your thinking. He was overbearing and cruel to a lady in her later years of life. What he wants is not a fair examination of factual evidence by you, the jury. What he wants to do is to fill your minds with negative impressions, none of which is based on actual fact. You cannot permit this to happen. This elderly woman loved her husband. She is not even capable of doing this terrible deed. She is just what you see here before you. A lady that had a most difficult life. Yes, those difficulties were not caused by Mr. Haight. She had no reason to hate him, not at all. The decision should not be difficult. It should be a fast decision and an honest decision. On this hand, we have information given by the district attorney that could apply to any of us who have had difficulties in our lives. Any of us in this room. On the other hand, we have what actually happened that night. George Haight shot himself in the head. Your vote should be, no, must be a unanimous, not guilty decision. This lady is not a murderer. She's a sweet lady who is your good friend, a church-going, well-mannered, delighted neighbor. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
And Mr. District Attorney, your closing remarks?
First of all, it would appear that her youth, her growing up period that's so critically important, was impossibly difficult. She lived in Pompey, then DeRuyter, then Casanova. Fabius next, then Watervale, then Pompey again, then Fabius again. Then Delphi and back to DeRuyter. How many times could those of us in this room say that we lived in 9 different communities as a youngster? Before George died, while he still had his senses and ability to communicate, Okay? These were his words to a close friend. About 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and I saw my wife place a revolver to my head and pull the trigger. I know no cause for her to do that. And how many women do you know that lost their first husband to spasms and dumped his body in the ocean? Lost her second husband to spasms and lost 2 of her children to seizures or spasms and lost her third husband by shooting him in the forehead with this gun. And in the case of each husband, received large sums of insurance money and property. No. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it's not a mistake to send this woman to the gallows. That's what she deserves. That's where she belongs. I respectfully urge you to vote guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. District Attorney. All of you men and women of the jury, you will have exactly 15 seconds to think about how you will vote. Everyone in the room votes by raising their hand when I ask you to do so. For those voting not guilty, raise their hands. Not guilty. Those that find Anjanette Haight guilty, raise your hands. Appears the jury has decided guilty, not unanimous. One vote. But we find Anjanette Haight guilty of murder.
The verdict, decided by the jury back on February 25th, 1884, was guilty. Guilty of murder. Mrs. Haight was sentenced to hang on April 18, 1884, at the jail yard in Morrisville. There had been 5 hangings in Morrisville prior to that time, 4 men and 1 woman. But Mrs. Haight's lawyer was infuriated by the jury's decision and appealed the decision to all higher state courts, and his appeal was rejected each time. Finally, just a few days before the hanging was to take place, Governor Grover Cleveland sent a message with a pardon regarding the death penalty. But the prison sentence remained in force. Mrs. Haight was first sent to Onondaga Penitentiary and then to Auburn State Prison till her death in 1897.
This court is adjourned.
Nancy Edwards once again read the part of Mrs. Haight. Jack Bigford read the part of the defense. Sam Fuller read the part of the judge. And Don Edwards not only wrote the play, but played the part of the district attorney. I'm fortunate enough to have the podium for just a moment. I'm going to ask that if you'll join with me in singing a birthday wish to Nancy Edwards, who just turned 75. I think this is an important date for us. She has done so much for all of her communities where she has been born and raised and lived, in all of the surrounding communities, and has been an integral part for all of us along with Don. So we'd like to have a little birthday wish right now. Bring it right out to us there. Hand it right over.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, who can start the singing better than I can?
Happy birthday.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Nancy. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Nancy has been so willing for many, many years to be an integral part in gathering all of our side road garbages and many, it's extremely difficult. She spends a lot of hours on the telephone with our legislative people and the surrounding governments to try to even get a lousy little operating caution thing to put up so that when she wears a vest and people are traveling on Route 20 or wherever she may be picking it up, we felt it only appropriate as a gift to her that please, for the love of God, Nancy, we need you another 75 years. Do